I realised I couldn't really see anything at all out of one of my eyes, and out the other one it was sort of okay. And then I played really the last game of football in a sense, or as I saw it, against Nottingham Trent Uni, and I literally played about 2 minutes of the game, and the goalkeeper basically took a goal kick, and I went up to try and head it, and I completely lost the ball, and I just realised my central vision was what was going, and so basically I lost my central vision. So my blind spot had suddenly become huge. I couldn't see the ball. So literally after about 3 minutes of the game, I just had to say, sorry, lads, I can't do it. And then I went through a series of, tests at the eye hospital, left university, came back to Sussex where there's an eye hospital down here. And after quite a few significant sort of tests, they realised I'd got a genetic condition.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Andy Dalby-Welsh, CEO of the London Youth Games. The London Youth Games is an annual event that has offered over 1.5 million young people the opportunity for sport and competition. An avid sportsman, Andy attended Birmingham University. While studying there, he developed a rare eye condition which meant he had to reimagine his life and career. He became a cricketer playing for England and Sussex's blind cricket teams. In the process, he realised that many young people could find school unengaging if they were blind or visually impaired. He decided to build a charity project that would offer them access to sport and excursions that would give them their first opportunity for independence. He continued his career in sports development, working at the Change Foundation and the Activity Alliance on their international and national programmes. Now the CEO of the London Youth Games, a youth-based sports competition that inspired athletes including Farah and Dina Asher-Smith. Enjoy the show. I'm excited to welcome today Andy Dalby-Welsh to the show. He's Chief Exec of the London Youth Games. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to it. And like we do at the start of the show, is just to give our listeners an insight and kind of get to know you a little bit quicker. It's always good to talk about kind of how we all grew up, and that tends to give people a good connection. So you grew up down on the South Coast, right? Yeah,
that's right. I grew up down near Brighton, and pretty passionate part of my life. Followed a brilliant football team in Brighton Hove Albion, and I've always been pretty sports mad down here.
It's a good time to follow them now. Was it always like that when you were growing up?
It sure wasn't. I mean, we're having just followed the World Cup recently. It was pretty extraordinary as a Brighton fan to see how many players we actually had representing different countries in the World Cup. And I think that was a pretty significant marker on how far the club has come from where we used to be, because there have been many World Cups where we've not had a player close to a squad at the World Cup. So the sheer number was pretty amazing.
I remember my background's track and field, and I remember you used to have a track around your ground, didn't you? Like you used to play before. You had the athletics track running around there. I don't know if I've competed there or not.
That's right, the Withdean Stadium. It was a temporary place for us to play, but it was pretty shocking when we weren't sure if we were going to survive. So we've come a long way in the last, 20 years.
Definitely. So football, obviously, being a big football fan, I'm assuming that was a huge part of your childhood growing up, playing football or representing for the school, etc.
Yeah, it was. I was a sort of sports mad growing up, to be honest. It was sort of what made education sort of bearable, I suppose, for me, was knowing that I could kick a ball around in the playground before school started, lunchtime and after school, and then any football club I could play at school. So it was always made it a more enjoyable time at school if we had PE. So yeah, football was my main sport, to be honest, when I was growing up. But I'd play anything I could possibly lay my hands on.
I guess your experience, and we always try to find this when we're speaking to the guests. Generally, if you, as a boy growing up, being like talented in sport or wanting to get involved in it, all what it felt like. Generally, people enjoyed school when that was the case. I don't know if that was the kind of memories you have, but was it always that? What about academics and stuff? Did you excel there, or were you more practical?
No, I didn't necessarily. I was much more sort of sporty, not even super practical, if I'm honest. I just sort of thrived in playing sport. I did all right. I passed my GCSEs and got a couple of A-levels, but not brilliant grades, if I'm honest. At time of A-levels was distracted by sport and other things that you can easily get distracted at that time of your life. And so I enjoyed school. I enjoyed doing my A-levels, but for the social side of life and the sporty side of life was sort of what sort of enabled me to thrive. So I enjoyed it, but yeah, sport certainly made it more fun than some of the other aspects of school and education.
Definitely. So I guess moving on through school and stuff like that, did you have any, was there any like real role models who kind of stuck out to you? That might be in a sporting context or not. Who was your role model, your hero growing up? Like who was close to you? So obviously we all had our kind of sports stars and stuff we like to follow, but did you have anyone who's kind of in your life there that you look back fondly on or think, right, that's why I've learned a lot from that person?
I don't know at the time, James, to be honest. I don't know if I sort of did growing up in a way. I mean, I looked up to, I suppose, some footballers when I sort of grew up, because that's what I loved sort of doing. My dad was brilliant and had a huge impact on my life. He'd been a head teacher as his sort of career and then a school advisor, but he basically ran our football team locally and had got me into football. And he was just incredibly well thought of by the people I played football with, but also much more broadly than that for what he'd sort of achieved. And sport had always been, and PE had always been a really big thing for young people in his school. And I think he saw the importance of it. He made space for it in the curriculum. And even though not teaching and being a head teacher sort of almost as I was then sort of going through the education system so much, it was still a real sort of passion of his of why it was so important for young people and what they could achieve through it. And so I'd say he was, but I think maybe some of the realizing that probably came looking back almost than at the time of observing him doing it. But
yeah, definitely it's hard for a teenager to understand the context of what they're being told at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned A-levels and you went on to university. What was the, I guess, I tend to ask everyone this one, but kind of your plan at the time of leaving school, going to uni, what was the kind of career map or the plan that you had in store for yourself at that point?
Yeah, if I'm honest, James, I didn't really have one. I did my A-levels. I really didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I didn't want an office job. I knew that. It's probably about all I knew, if I'm honest. But I knew I sort of wanted to go away and give university a go. So I found a course. I was actually going to train to be a chartered surveyor, which was an estate management course. And I just chose that. I chose to go to Birmingham to mix it up and go somewhere else. And I chose that because I thought it's a reasonably practical job. Won't be in the office all the time. I'll have to go out and visit sites, and therefore that sounds like a reasonable idea. And that sort of was where I got to when I headed off to Birmingham. Nice.
So at university, was that Birmingham, big city, big university as well down there? So was that almost not a culture shock, but like different environment? And you continue playing sport at that point? Was it football then for the uni and stuff like that? Or?
It was. I mean, it was something that happened to me while I was at Birmingham, really, that in a sense has led me to be where I am now and chief exec at London Youth Games. So I was in Birmingham for about 6 months, and I loved it. Joined the football team. I was loving that. Partly loving my course, but I was loving football more. I was enjoying going out, meeting people, all of that sort of side of things. And it was sort of having been there for 6 months, I developed a rare eye condition, and that basically left me becoming registered blind in about a period of about 6-7 weeks.
So it was that quick of a progression, was it? Yeah, from being diagnosed to how did you get diagnosed? You don't mind me asking the story, like the kind of story behind it. Did you just something notice symptoms and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it playing football. So I literally was training one afternoon after uni and sort of missing the ball, and it was a bit like I felt like I was playing with a hangover, but I hadn't been out the day before, really. But I hadn't, and I just wasn't quite sure what was happening. And then in a lecture, I realised I couldn't actually see the board any longer at the front of the class, and so I was sort of trying to work out what was going on, and I was covering one eye and then the other eye to see. And when I covered one eye, I realised I couldn't really see anything at all. out of one of my eyes, and out the other one it was sort of okay. And then I played really the last game of football in a sense, or as I saw it, against Nottingham Trent Uni, and I literally played about 2 minutes of the game, and the goalkeeper basically took a goal kick, and I went up to try and head it, and I completely lost the ball, and I just realised I'd got my central vision was what was going, and so basically I lost my central vision, so my blind spot had suddenly become huge. I couldn't see the ball, so literally after about 3 minutes of the game, I just had to say, "Sorry, lads, I can't do it." And then I went through a series of tests at the eye hospital, left university, came back to Sussex where there's an eye hospital down here, and after quite a few significant sort of tests, they realised I'd got a genetic condition that basically takes away your central vision. And from noticing it at the back end of February, I was registered blind on the 11th of May. So it was
must have been a scary time for you, I guess. As you kind of noticed it, and obviously it's in the middle of the game, thinking like that moment, it must have been scary, especially that age, maybe even in environment as well. It's not like you were playing for a professional club where they've got a doctor there and all that type of stuff, and they're kind of managing it. Essentially, that was that for you at the time in terms of, I'm saying scary, but sure feeling.
It was. I mean, it was super surreal because, as I say, it was so quick. And one eye deteriorated, it felt like overnight, because I suddenly then started noticing it. And then as I was trying to work out what was happening, my other eye started deteriorating as well, which was then when I decided I'd leave Birmingham and work out what was sort of happening for the rest, suspend my course. Went through all the tests, and so I was sort of just toing and froing through hospital, in and out, various appointments, brain scans, all that sort of stuff, until they were able to diagnose it. And it's pretty rare, so it sort of took some diagnosing. And so, as I said, it was just super surreal in a way for this to sort of happen so quickly and completely out the blue. And so just sort of strange, but I was pretty fortunate, great family and some absolutely great friends, and kept me positive. And I had to start sort of thinking, once they were able to diagnose, it sort of became clear it wasn't going to get better. Just sort of had to get on with it and find another way. Yeah,
I suppose there's a little bit of comfort in terms of knowing exactly what it is that's the issue. But you mentioned they're super supportive. You got the support network around you. But for that period after diagnosis, and like you said, what was your thought process there? Was it kind of like what's next? How do we deal with this? Or now you know what you're dealing with. What's the kind of the next step for that?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of decided, and I was very fortunate. There's a charity down here that worked with blind and visually impaired young people up until the age of 30, and I got a visit from them and a couple of ladies who were registered blind who came and sort of chatted through things, what they'd got up to, and gave a bit of hope really and positivity, and sort of said, we still lead a full life. You have to do things differently, but there's so many opportunities out there. That was helpful, and that charity assisted me in retraining to use a computer differently, learning to touch type and doing some training. And I returned to college, did an A-level in psychology because I wanted to get back on track as quickly as I could. So I wanted to put into practice what I was learning through the charity into practice in academia. So I did an A-level in psychology with the plan of wanting to get back to university, not to estate management, because I realised I might not be a very good surveyor.
That's going to change. Yeah, it's going to change you. Yeah, exactly. I just thought of that. Change you.
So that was a big change of track, and I decided I wanted to stay down in Sussex, where everything was pretty familiar and I could get around through sort of memory than heading off anywhere else. And so I enrolled and headed back to university at Sussex and did a degree in social policy.
What's your relationship with cricket? Could you speak on that? Because I think I don't know if that started at this point or not, or whether it was something from childhood, but it's interesting to kind of dive into that.
Yeah, no, it was. Having developed the eye condition, I mean, one of the things that I thought, having grown up being really sporty and developing my eye condition, I just thought sport wasn't going to be an option anymore. I was pretty competitive, and I thought, well, it just won't. That's not going to be for me. So I hadn't.
Is that the danger, Andy? That when myself or anyone else who maybe develops a condition or has something like an accident or something happens, that you kind of tell yourself that's not, like you said, it's not for me. Is that a danger that many people fall into?
I think they could. I mean, I did. I definitely did. I mean, I just sort of thought, well, I can't play football anymore. That's that. if I did anything, it won't be as competitive as it was. And therefore, I just sort of thought it's not going to be for me. And that it certainly was in the end. I thoroughly enjoyed sort of going back to university and studying, but it was basically in the third year of doing my degree down in Sussex that Sussex County Cricket Club set up a blind cricket team. And I basically ummed and ahed. It was, again, the charity that had given me the sort of support, basically sent out some information about this blind cricket team starting. And I thought, I don't know if it's for me, but I was missing playing sport. And so I thought I'll give it a go. And I went along, basically packed a bag or borrowed a mate's sort of full cricket kit because I had no idea how the game worked. And so I took the full kit and marched off to Arundel to go and give it a go. And it completely changed my world and sent me in a completely different career direction.
Yes, I guess, was it up until that point you weren't looking at a career in sport or whatever, say, like an activity? And was it a case that, for first session you kind of took to it and were you better than everyone else, or was the talent level there?
No, it was really interesting. It was a mixture. It was sort of a team that had come together, but we played a guest team of some people who were sighted and other blind players as well. Some other blind and visually impaired players, and a couple of those were involved with the England side. So it was a real mix of players, but I took to it well, performed pretty well, and got encouraged back and to play again. And then having sort of played one more friendly and taken to it pretty well. I'd played some cricket when I was younger, so although football was more my sport, I had played a bit of cricket. I was basically invited to go to an England training weekend and watch a series between England and Pakistan, which was taking place in Bradfield College up in Berkshire, which was incredible.
And I guess you've also then at that point you've got back that feeling of anyone who's played team sports or enjoyed team sports is always the kind of the team and the social aspect of it, or just the change, feeling the changing rooms before and after a game, all that type of stuff. You've kind of got that back in your life then, once you've got back and got into cricket.
For sure. I mean, it absolutely that. And it was like the Sussex team has been brilliant. I play less now, or barely at all now, because relatively young family and work commitments and what have you. But while I was playing, I loved it. We get the train to games across the country, or a coach to games across the country. And again, from visiting and watching the England v Pakistan blind cricket series that I watched that first time and took part in the training weekend, watching the matches that took place as that series, and my fear that sort of disability sport wouldn't be competitive enough for me, it was just like, well, man alive. Felt more competitive than anything I'd done before, to be honest. I mean, I'm not sure that there's differences of the level of competition in that sense, but it wasn't any less competitive than anything I'd done. It looked amazing, and I just wanted to be part of it. And the team spirit all around it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And so, it just made me think, I want to be part of this.
This is kind of running alongside your studies at university, etc., down in Sussex.
Yeah.
What was the step out of uni then? I guess when you finished university, looking for kind of career opportunities, etc., what was the thought process, or and we're going to go through to London Youth Games, but those steps in between, was it Change Foundation initially that you went to?
Yeah, it was really. So I did a couple of things. So the cricket took me to represent England. In my last year of uni, I went and played in a Blind Cricket World Cup in India, and I played every game in that, and we lost in the semi-finals, but it was just incredible. And then the then coach of the England team ran the charity, the Change Foundation. And soon after that World Cup, they were going out, or the England team were going out to Barbados to introduce blind cricket, which was a tough gig, a really tough gig. And he asked whether I would want to join them and go to Barbados for 10 days and help set up blind cricket, which, jumped at that chance. And I did that, and it sort of involved coaching and that side of things. And really, I think through that last year at university, from getting back into sport, and I think reflecting on how much sport meant to me when I was growing up, it made me think, actually, that's what I want to do. And so coming out of university, working with Andy Sellins, who's the chief exec at the Change Foundation and the England blind cricket coach at the time, helped me to set up a charity down in Sussex called Sport for Choice, which was about helping blind and visually impaired kids to have access to sport and physical activity in the school holidays. So I did that and then began coaching at Change Foundation, going off to blind and visually impaired, or schools for the blind and visually impaired, and introducing the game to other blind and visually impaired young people. And from that sort of foundation of really wanting to create those opportunities for other young people that, may not enjoy school in the same way that I did because the opportunities weren't as positive. I wanted to set about trying to create those opportunities for them.
And Change Foundation, you were there for a long time. I think it was like almost 15 years. Started in that position, but you worked your way up to be kind of that operations director, was it, at the time you moved on? Was it a difficult decision, I guess, 15 years in any place, it's hard to move on? What was kind of the thought process around it when you decided to?
Yeah, it was a really, really, really difficult decision. I mean, one, as you might have probably gathered from the things I've enjoyed doing, I like people, working with people, working in teams, playing in teams, and the people in places mean a lot to me. And I'd worked with Andy for sort of 13 years. He was my coach who got me into the blind cricket. We'd done a lot together. We travelled the world doing sport for development project in incredible countries. And he'd given me some of the most incredible opportunities that, before my eyes deteriorated, I wouldn't have thought was ever going to happen. So that was really sort of tough to think, actually, it's time to move on. But for whatever reason, I had a real drive to want to try and lead an organisation and challenge myself. And Andy was doing a brilliant job, and he's still doing a brilliant job of leading the Change Foundation. So that opportunity wasn't going to arise quickly. It just reached a point where it was time to challenge myself in another way and somewhere else. So I made that call to move on and challenge myself at another organisation.
Barry Horn's previous guest of ours on the show as well. So you're over at the Activity Alliance there for a stint before being at the youth games. So it's a difficult one to guess. I know it's a short period of time, but what do you feel your impact was there with the Alliance? And was it a time of only deputy at the time, but was it landing in a new role, having been somewhere for a long time and starting something fresh? What was your experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Again, the people were fantastic, made me feel really, really welcome. We set about changing the name. Well, funnily enough, when moving into the organisation, it was one of the things sort of identified as I felt like it needed modernising. When I joined, Barry sort of pointed out they'd started looking at it, and so it gave me the opportunity to really try and drive that through. I felt like the membership sort of offer needed updating and developing, and set about sort of working on that as well. Working with the sort of leadership team to lift the conversation of the organisation as well, in terms of trying to really help make the organisation the go-to organisation on issues around getting disabled people active. And they already were, to be fair to some people, but it felt like could really benefit from, that sort of rebrand and really confidently making that what the organisation was about and driving inclusivity for disabled people. And we ran a Making Active Lives Possible conference at the Oval, I think in probably the year before I moved on. That I think, again, went really well, brought loads of people together, really exciting people speaking about really big issues. And I know John Amici, who's the vice patron or president at Activity Alliance, brilliantly intelligent guy, former basketballer, but far more now known around issues of equality and psychological leadership within organisations, sort of chaired it for us, emceed the day, and said, we've been part of the conversation before, but now we're leading that conversation. And I think that sort of hit the nail on the head, really. It was about leading a conversation rather than being part of it. And so it felt like a reasonably short time, but
a big impact, all right? I think
hopefully a big impact.
Yeah, definitely. I think looking at the Alliance now, I think it's kind of, it is what you, as you explained it, as you kind of the go-to organisation. So what drew, and we're going to good time now for us to kind of go into kind of London Youth Games and learn about that. But what drew you to the role initially with London Youth Games? And obviously we'll learn about it now with talking to anyone across the country or the world, etc. They might not know about it. But initially, what was your kind of the pull towards that role?
Yeah, I think it was the challenge of it, connecting back to sort of sport. London, a place where I'd worked a lot at the Change Foundation. I'd heard about London Youth Games being mentioned a lot, and I was ready to take that leadership position. And when looking at it, it looked like the most fantastic vehicle, but some of the comments weren't necessarily about it being as inclusive as it could be. So when asking people, I quite often got comments back saying, "Oh yeah, the youth games, it's amazing, isn't it? But it's sport for sporty kids." And right. I think that's what really sort of resonated with me, or didn't resonate with me, was that's great, but what about the other kids? And actually it should be about everybody having access to these opportunities, not just sporty kids. Because I was a sporty kid. It did me the world of good going through school and doing all the things I did. But I since have spent far more time trying to create opportunities almost for the non-sporty kids in a way. And the difference it's making them is so profound that I was just keen to ensure that through the London Youth Games, we can actually reach some of those broader audiences and give them an amazing life-changing experience that sport can bring.
Yeah, because it's almost like you said, for those kids who aren't sporty or like, as they call it, like semi-sporty, or whatever, the impact or the positive impact of sport is like a multiplier, but versus someone who's already involved in it and getting the benefit. I mean, looking at some of the stats in terms of the engagement and the reach for London Youth Games over the last 3 years, 360,000 young people, 33 boroughs. You kind of got almost like a massive captive audience, right? Everyone's well known across the city. It's a good time to kind of look at, I guess, the offer. What is the London Youth Games? How does it work? And for those people outside the city, how do schools get involved in it?
Yeah, no, sure. We basically deliver the school games in London, and then we have an open games program. So the school games reaches young people within their educational settings through a network of school games organisers. And we look at providing sport, often competitive sporting opportunities for those young people. In the past, and it's evolving a bit, but in the past, it's within a borough of London. Those schools would compete in a sport against one another, and then they'd flow through to the London-wide finals. And we would organise the London-wide finals for a whole range of different sports, but create this amazing event for young Londoners from across London to come together and compete against one another. And this, in terms of the open games, it's all the local authorities of London that are our members. A brilliant team of borough team organisers across London are responsible then for working with volunteers within their borough who'll bring coaches, recruit coaches to run training and trials for young people within a borough to represent their borough in a particular sport. And so there's a whole range of sports that we cater for, from swimming to football, tennis, hockey's involved, archery's been part of the programme, diving, weightlifting's been part of the programme. So, people have compared it to sort of a mini Olympics for London, really, in the past, and just a whole range. And one of the unintended sort of consequences, or maybe it is intended, but has been that young people have often had the chance to try sport and then move into another sport because they may have seen it for the first time at the London Youth Games. So there's routes into it through the school games. There's routes through it through the Open Games programme. And historically, the finals used to take place Crystal Palace National Sports Stadium. Is not quite there to be able to host the wider range of sports that we offer. And so for the first time this year, we'll have a finals and festival weekend across a weekend in July where we've got access to a whole range of amazing facilities to be able to use the Copper Box, the Aquatic Centre, the Vela Park, the Tennis and Hockey Centre, and create,
almost is the Olympics. Yeah, you've got that Olympic feel about the multi-venue. And
so it's a really exciting evolution.
Definitely. I guess we always kind of look at, from a funding perspective, and that's a challenging landscape for everyone at the moment, but how's the games the organisation funded? Is it via kind of YST or U Sport Network, stuff like that? How does it tend to? How do you kind of cover the cost of putting on such a huge event?
Yeah, we have the local authorities of London as our members. They all pay a subscription fee each year to be a member of the games. Sport England supports us by funding our school games offer. Nike, we have as sponsors, again, brilliant to have on board and supporting us. And then we look to raise funds from other sources as well. So Greater London Authority, other charitable trusts and foundations. And we're looking again to build that sort of sponsorship portfolio to ensure we can keep the games developing and growing, because, as you say, it's challenging out there, and we want to be able to try and help the participants as much as possible, because my drive and ambition to ensure that it's not just sport for sporty kids. If you can't afford to feed your kids, it's pretty unlikely you're paying for them to go and take part in something, or you can afford for them to travel somewhere, or you can afford to buy the kit for something. And so what we want to be doing is building our offer even further, that we make it as accessible to everybody, no matter their background, because it's such a challenging climate.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask, that's one of my questions actually, is kind of what's going to be your, as you're looking forward for the next year or so, or 3 years, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that you're going to have to overcome? And do you have kind of an approach to attack that?
I do think that the financial climate's going to be tough. I mean, we provide a brilliant games, but we're reliant on a brilliant network to find the young people, support them on their journey, and then bring them to take part in the experience we put on. And I think with the pressure on local authorities, I think the pressure on families and young people, that's going to be tough. I think the opportunity is that there are so many great organisations delivering brilliant work across London, that it's about how can we help. And we're pretty unique because the 33 boroughs of London are our members. We've got reach across the whole of the capital and through the school games organiser network. How can we, and what we want to do is to play a really helpful part to connect organisations and ensure that those working within a borough and across London are able to signpost young people and support them with their journey to the London Youth Games. And I think that sort of collaborative working over the next year to 3 years will be sort of not only critical for our success, but sort of critical to the success of young people in London.
I definitely agree. It's one of those things, kind of having the overview or the oversight of everything that's happened and try and pull it all together. There's always kind of not only the kind of desire to not duplicate what people like, duplicate services or offerings, but also, you could leverage, everyone can kind of leverage off everyone else and improve their offer. And like I said, the exit routes that you provided, the kind of the perfect outlet. I've just got a couple more questions. I guess switching gears a little bit in terms of how you manage your day, right? So you're leading the organisation, a lot of moving parts. I just mentioned there, like you've got all the boroughs in London, you've got all the leaders of all those boroughs, or you've got your members and the funders, sponsors, whatever it be. Do you have any kind of tactics that you use in terms of organising your time or staying on peak performance, that type of thing? A lot of kind of stress and pressure in there. Do you have anything that you utilise to kind of ensure that you're working at peak levels?
I think ensuring I have time for my own physical activity. So I mentioned I don't really play blind cricket anymore. I try and go to the gym 3 times a week and do a class, and I love doing that, but it's sort of keeping a habit right and that it doesn't drop. So when it's a habit going, I'm really good at it. If I drop out the habit of going, it's really easy to sort of think, oh, that grant application is really important. I'll do that. Or I'm going to get up and clear my emails before I take the girls to school. And your priorities go off kilter a bit. And I think the ensuring that you protect that time for your own physical activity, for both being productive, but also making sort of better decisions and just feeling better. I think that is really, really important for me. And I know, I'm sure others, feel it. There's a lot around mental health at the moment. I think, protecting your own well-being, both physical and mental, and through physical activity, especially leading an organisation that's promoting those benefits, that feels like a really important one to protect from my perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that one. It can be, like you just mentioned there, it can be easy to let it. There's always something to do, right? So you could always find an excuse not to go out and do something physical. So especially in your role. Last question, Andy, and it's a bit of a reflective one in terms of your progression in your career. If you were going to have to describe the distance travelled, like who have you had to become, or what characteristic have you had to work on in yourself to become the kind of the leader that you are from when you started out in your career?
I'd say resilience is one of those things, and an openness to learn, which is two. And I know you asked for one, I think resilience for my own sort of personal life experience at first, and then being able to remain positive, for which I'm grateful for. I think I was fortunate to be given that positivity, and I think in a sense that's enabled me to keep moving forward. And as the challenges have come, and COVID was one of those, as it was for many, but an organisation that's absolutely about getting large numbers of young people together to have a brilliant time, normally in quite a small space. That was super challenging. That is what we were about. And so we had to really fight to remain relevant and be innovative to remain relevant through that time, because we didn't know how long that all was going to last for. So that resilience, I think, is key in a leadership position. And then the one about being sort of open to learn. I've been very fortunate. I had a guy giving me leadership coaching through this sort of journey. And he encouraged me to do a leadership study when I didn't want to do more academic sort of studies. And I went and interviewed a whole range of leaders in a whole range of different fields to learn what the question you asked me, really, what they draw upon and what's made them sort of, great leaders. And I'm always keen to learn from others and how they got there and what makes them successful, and sort of a bit of learning and asking for help and not being afraid to do so, I think is also hugely helpful to achieve.
Would you recommend that in terms of I guess not something that is widespread, obviously becoming more widespread, but in terms of the coaching, the leadership coaching and having that person there, is that something you recommend to other leaders to explore?
Definitely. I think that independent perspective, that challenge as well, I think is, positive challenge, but challenge. So you can identify your goals, but actually someone assisting you to achieve them through that reflective sort of coaching. I've benefited from hugely, and it's been absolutely invaluable, and I'm immensely grateful for. And I don't think I'd be in the position I'm in now without it, if I'm completely honest. No,
I totally agree with you. I mean, it's like the comparisons with sport. You set your goals in sport, and there's generally you'd be looked at a little bit daft if you didn't have a coach and you're trying to achieve something in sport, right? And you're trying to do something that is probably leading organisations all encompassing, lonely. You got someone there to support and guide you. So yeah, I second that for sure. Andy, really appreciate your time today. It's been great chatting to you. Thanks for your transparency, and all the best with the games. Is there a date? When's the games for 2023?
Yeah, so we're up and running. We had cross country on the 19th of November, where we had 1,800 odd young people running around Parliament Hill, and then the activities run again from spring, and then our finals weekend, which will be at the Olympic Park. Hopefully an amazing sort of festival of sport will be running across the 1st and 2nd of July. So nice. Super excited for that.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good. So check that out. And thanks again, Andy, for your time. Really appreciate it, mate.
Pleasure. Cheers. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_Ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.